Snowblind.
Snowblind.
Snowblind!
Snowblind?
This thing is so freaking cool!
It's genuinely quite amazing.
Yes, it is quite amazing and quite easy to do on your own, as you can see here. Or is it? Welcome to Volume 1 of When Modding Goes Horribly Wrong. What's going on YouTube? My name is Chris and welcome to ImmodderNation. This mod has been a long time coming since last year when I spotted IBUYPOWER's Project Snowblind at PAX. There we saw Linus Tech Tips give a rare, enthusiastic impression of the case.
I can't look away from it! This is the coolest side panel window I have ever seen. Let me look at that like ink blot effect! I was like, how did they do this?
Since then, the Project Snowblind has gone through a second iteration, showing its true final form. Project Snowblind is the Pokemon of case mods. Rumors are going around that the case mod itself was going to sell for $350. Now I know you're thinking, well, that's great, Chris, why don't I just go out and buy it instead of watching your video? Now hold on. Now that $350 is also attached to a $1,200 computer. IBUYPOWER decided not to sell the case alone, but rather in a completed system. Before I begin this mod, I thought to myself, something seems familiar about this. Something like, maybe I've seen this somewhere before, and then I remembered.
That was my idea 3 years ago. I actually went out and did it, and now it's going to be in retail. That's pretty sweet.
In 2013, this mod was completed by none other than Chris Albee, aka the Modsquito from the Mod Zoo. Chris was nice enough to post a complete detailed work log of how he completed the mod, and of course I'll put a link to that website in the description below. Now for his mod, he used a portable USB monitor. This is an AOC one, which is not too different from the one that he used. It's powered off of a USB cable and can be attached to either a laptop or a desktop computer. Now I didn't use this monitor. Instead, I used a full 120 volt hardwired monitor. I had to connect the power board to the monitor directly to the power supply, and I'll show you how I did that. On top of that, I was able to complete this mod for under $100. This build video is going to be separated into 3 parts. The first part, I'll show you the disassembly of the monitor. In the second part, I'm going to show you how I created the window and the LCD assembly. And in the third part, I'm going to add lighting, wiring, and I'm going to show you the completed mod. All right, are you ready? Let's get started. All right, so the first thing we're going to focus on is the monitor. Now I've got a Dell 19-inch ultra sharp. Didn't have it in my notes. What I did find is it's a Dell 19-inch ultra sharp. It's a you know, who cares? All right, we're gonna tear this thing apart and we're gonna throw it in that case. But for those of you who care, it's a 1907 FP ultra sharp. The most important features about this monitor are the dimensions of the LCD, in which case they're 14.96 by 11.81. Let me get my calculator here. That's about 1.26 aspect ratio, which is about a 5:4. The reason why that aspect ratio is important is because we want to get as close to a square as possible, a 1:1 aspect ratio. Unfortunately, these monitors are very rare and very expensive. Another important feature about this monitor is price. I found this monitor on Craigslist for 30 bucks. So if you're looking to do this project, make sure you don't spend a whole lot of money on one of these monitors. I know they're old and discontinued, but you can find a good used one either on Craigslist or eBay, or check with friends or check your garage. Maybe you have one lying around or know somebody who does. This disassembly guide is specific to the Dell Ultra Sharp monitor. Now, if you're following along, your disassembly might be different. We start by popping off the stand for the monitor and removing 4 back screws. Now I'm using a flathead screwdriver to pry the front bezel off of the monitor itself. You want to be careful here as to not damage the LCD because it is in fact unprotected. The back of the monitor should fall right off and you're left with this metal chassis. Nobody wants these monitors anymore. They want the 16:9 high definition ones. So that's good for us because we can get these monitors for cheap. I'm removing the USB and the backlight connections because we're not going to need these anymore. We simply need to power the LCD itself. A couple screws on the side hold the electronics to the LCD itself. It's a shame that most of this is going to end up in the garbage. Maybe I can find another project that will utilize the lights. We're removing our main board, which will be the only thing we'll be using here for our project, so make sure you're very careful with it. This ribbon cable will be connecting our main board to the LCD, so make sure you take good care of this one too. How many screws does it take to develop carpal tunnel syndrome? The world may never know. All right, and finally the main board and power board are out. They're soldered together, so I had to remove them as one piece. I'm using a precision flathead screwdriver to pry up the plastic that holds our connector to the LCD in place. You want to be very careful with this part. There's some small clips that are holding the LCD assembly together, and they're all throughout the entire LCD assembly. You'll have to go slow and carefully pry them off. They're really a big pain in the ass, and I really hated them, but they come off with a little patience. The front bezel is finally off and we're able to pull the LCD away. For those of you that just wanted to learn how to take a monitor apart, your stop is here, but for everyone else, let's continue on. Alright, so now that we've taken the monitor apart, we're on to part 2, which is constructing the monitor assembly that will be attaching inside of the case. So I'm gonna head out to ePlastics. I need to get some acrylic or polycarbonate. I don't know which one I'm gonna get right now. It really just depends on what the prices are and what they suggest. I'm gonna let them know about my project and hopefully they can pick out something good for me. What I can tell you is that the window in my case is made of polycarbonate. So I might just end up doing a whole polycarbonate build. But acrylic might also be a good choice too. It just depends on what they suggest and what they have to offer. So I think this is the showroom. We're gonna head inside and we're gonna go get our acrylic or polycarbonate, and I'll be right back in a second. All right, so I'm back from ePlastics. I've got this 2 foot by 4 foot piece of acrylic. It's about as big as I am. I'm a little bit bigger. The people at ePlastics suggested that I get acrylic instead of polycarbonate just because the polycarbonate is going to scratch, whereas the acrylic will not scratch as easily. Acrylic is not as strong as polycarbonate, but at least acrylic is not going to break as easily as, say, glass. I got the 1/8 inch. I don't know if you can see that. This was about 30 bucks, so go ahead and add that to the register. I'm not going to use the whole thing, it's just that this is the smallest size that they sell. My first order of business is getting this polycarbonate window out so that I can replace it with the new acrylic. We need to push these tabs up and simply pull the polycarbonate out. I'm using a Black & Decker rotary tool with a Dremel fiberglass reinforced cutting wheel. You don't want shards of metal in your eye, so use protection, kids. Now I realize I could just bend these tabs back and forth until they break off, but any excuse to use power tools is a good excuse for me. Now to measure and cut a properly sized piece of acrylic. Oh, I'm scoring so hard right now. You so jelly. Snapping acrylic sounds like you're breaking a table. It's actually quite terrifying. Well, now that that's over, we have our properly sized piece of acrylic. All right, it fits. Good job, me. You peel off that nasty brown paper and reveal the goddess inside of you. There's a small gap between the window and the case itself, so we're gonna fill that gap with some shims for support. And that means breaking more acrylic. Shim shiminy, shim shiminy, shim shim sharoo. I'm using Scotch 410 DC double-sided clear tape. This stuff is very strong and loved by modders everywhere. Hopefully it'll be strong enough to hold our acrylic LCD assembly in place. I'm placing the shims in the corners and laying the acrylic window on top of it. I'm using a dry Swiffer pad to collect any remaining dust and dirt. These things are wonderful. You should steal them from your mom. I mean, ask nicely. This next step is optional, but I recommend using Novus plastic polish to remove any surface scratches from the acrylic. Wipe off any remaining polish and get ready for the final part of our video, part 3. Now I'm going to be moving on to part 3 of the build, which is going to be adding the backlighting. So for the lighting, I'm going to be using these double density LEDs. I had featured them in a preview video a while back when I was experimenting with some lighting inside of my case. Hopefully these are bright enough. This was based on recommendation by Modsquito to use high density or double density LED lighting to get enough light to be able to cast light through. The problem is that there's a dark shade to the LCD, and without any sort of backlighting, you're not going to be able to see any images. Well, the reason why I'm wearing a hat is just to prevent any hair or any dust or dandruff. Yes, I do use Head and Shoulders. This part is very important because as I put the screen down and seal it, it's going to trap any dirt or particles that may be in between. So I want to make sure it's as clean as possible before I put everything in permanently. Before we start wiring everything up, I'm going to need to make a wiring harness. Now I had this old wiring adapter from some scythe fans. We're going to modify it to fit our project needs. On a molex connector, your red wire is your 5 volt and your yellow wire is your 12 volt. This should be perfect for powering the LCD and our lighting respectively. This molex connector is already wired up for a 12 volt fan, so we're going to use the fan connector to connect our lighting. I remembered Modsquito's portable monitor only required USB, which runs on 5 volts, so I theorized that our LCD must only need 5 volts to be powered as well. I use this fan extension cable to make the other end of our adapter, which will connect to the lighting. The next part of our guide could best be described through these still images. I didn't have the proper schematics to determine which of these power lines were absolutely necessary, so I began clipping wires one by one, checking to see if the LCD had turned off. Sort of like defusing a bomb, but in reverse. You want to make sure the bomb is still active. Once I found my active wires, I bundled the rest of the wires up with a zip tie. I then soldered my leads to the 5 volt and ground wires in my molex connector. If you're wondering which wire is which, your guess is as good as mine. I tested the wires before soldering them to the molex connector. Connect them the right way and your LCD screen will turn on. Connect them the wrong way and your power supply will short and shut down your computer. Good luck. Most modern monitors, especially Dell monitors, come with an anti-glare coating. I found a guide online that explains how to remove it. Soak some paper towels or a super absorbent towel in some distilled water and lay it over your computer screen.
6 hours later.
4 to 5 hours later, remove the wet towel from your computer screen. I'm using a plastic razor blade to peel up one of the corners without scratching the LCD. The coating should come off very easily, and if it doesn't, continue soaking under your wet paper towels and try again in an hour. Pretty neat, huh? Show this trick to all your friends. You'll be so popular. I placed the display face down onto my case window, and I'm marking off with a Sharpie the corners of where I want it mounted. To secure the LCD display, I'm using more of this really strong tape to tape the corners. I've got my LED strip lighting pre-wired and ready to install. That could only mean one thing. It's hot glue time. And it's time to solder on the fan connector. I'm creating an acrylic platform to protect the electronics from any moisture that might drip inside of the case. Drilling holes in the acrylic to mount the PCB, or just another excuse to use power tools? The answer is yes. I managed to crack the acrylic, but nobody's gonna see it anyway. I attached the main board to the top of my computer case, did some cable management, and plugged it all in. So this mod didn't actually turn out the way that I thought it was going to. I encountered a lot of problems on the way. First of all, I destroyed 2 perfectly good monitors. This monitor here, this wasn't actually the first monitor that I used. So I used both a Dell 1907 and 1908 FP. And after the damage to the ribbon cable on the second one, I'll be pursuing a third monitor in version 2.0 of my project Snowblind. The other thing that I need to do is upgrade the lighting. The lighting inside is not bright enough, which explains why I've got this awkward lighting setup. I wanted to be able to capture both myself and the visible mod in the background. I think I'll be able to improve the lighting by using high density LED strip lighting. This is the lighting that Modsquito used in his build, and really I should have followed his instructions. I decided that having double wide LEDs would be bright enough. Unfortunately, the LEDs that I were sold were not cool white, they were actually warm white, so I'll have to check the order form on that again to see what exactly it was I ordered from Amazon. Yeah. One of the things that we can do is add a toggle switch to the LED strip lighting, and that will allow me to turn it off at night when it's not being used. Also, what I've noticed, and as you've noticed as well, is that the monitor doesn't fill the gaps in the window. A way that I could fix that in the future is by adding Plasti Dip. So matte black Plasti Dip should be able to cover the edges of the LCD. So that might be something we'll see in version 2.0. One of the other issues that I had is the contrast aspect of it. In fact, IBUYPOWER's own website says that you could only purchase products that are white in order to enhance the contrast of the LCD. Maybe in the future I'll create a guide on how to paint your motherboard. Maybe. You might want to be on the lookout for that. Hint, hint. Special thanks to all the coverage and help I had with this project. First to Luke and Linus from Linus Tech Tips for all of the coverage and for bringing this mod to my attention. Steve Burke from Gamer Nexus for providing more in-depth look at how the hardware mod was performed. I really want to extend a very special thanks to Chris Albee, who I messaged back and forth and was a great help in constructing this mod and sort of troubleshooting some of the problems that I ran into. If you have any other suggestions for the second iteration, make sure you leave those in the comments section or send me a message. I might consider your ideas for version 2.0. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure you give me a like, subscribe, and share this video with somebody else. You leave me a comment down in the comment section. Let me know, what do you think of this mod? I mean, there's a lot of improvements that I can make, but do you think it's cool? Were you interested in buying Project Snowblind from the beginning? Are you still interested in getting the Snowblind case if IBUYPOWER decides to sell it individually? Join the nation by clicking on the subscribe button below, and when you do, make sure you click the bell icon inside the subscribe logo, and that will let you know the moment that I release new YouTube videos. And as always, you can reach me by social media through Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. You can catch me Fridays at 6 p.m. only on Twitch. I hope you enjoyed my video, and if you did, maybe you'll enjoy some of the other videos that I've put out. Like the time I put a light up window inside of a Steam Link. Ooh, or that time where I delidded a Skylake processor and almost dropped the temperature by 20 degrees. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.